You think you are helping, and maybe, at the beginning, you really were. You saw someone you loved, drowning in their own poor choices, and you reached out a hand. It is what decent, caring people do. But look at where you are standing now. You call it unconditional love. You call it fierce, unshakable loyalty. You whisper to yourself in the dark that you are the only one capable of pulling them from the wreckage. But the uncomfortable, devastating truth that you are terrified to face is this. Your cohunks, trying to fix someone who refuses to heal is not love. It is the arrogance of wanting control. You know the exact exhaustion I am talking about. It is not the tiredness of a long, honest day's work. It is a slow, parasitic drain that settles deep into the marrow of your bones. It is the exhaustion of standing on the front lines of a war that does not belong to you. You sit awake at 2 a.m, staring at a glaring screen, absorbing their toxic, repetitive complaints. You map out entire life plans for them. You offer the same lifelines they continuously, intentionally refuse to grab. You empty your own soul to pour into a vessel with a shattered bottom. You are bleeding out to keep someone else warm, and they are irritated that your blood is staining their shoes. Mercy. There was a man named Elias who lived his entire life inside this exact delusion. Elias was the eternal shock absorber, the man who willingly stood between his loved ones and the brutal consequences of their own actions. When his partner spiraled into dark, self-destructive habits, he didn't argue. He just quietly cleaned up the mess, built heavier walls around her, and intercepted the ruin she was actively inviting. When his oldest friend gambled away his rent for the 3rd time in a year, Elias sat in the silence of his car, staring at the banking app on his phone, and transferred the money. Again, he truly believed his sacrifices made him a protector. But the dark, unspoken secret was something much more sinister. Elias was addicted to their incompetence. Their endless chaos gave him a highly convenient, noble excuse to avoid facing his own empty, stagnant reality. The collapse of this delusion did not come with a loud, cinematic explosion. It came with the quiet, suffocating whisper of absolute betrayal. After years of relentless intervention, his partner did not look at him with tearful gratitude. She looked at him with cold, unadulterated contempt. "You are suffocating me," she said. She blamed him for her own weakness. She told him that his constant rescues only made her feel pathetic. And his friend? After being bailed out from the edge of the abyss for the final time, he simply vanished in the night, leaving Elias sitting alone at his kitchen table, holding a devastating, ruinous financial burden, and absolutely nothing else. He had sacrificed his entire existence to build a safe fortress for them, only to realize he had constructed a prison, and the prisoners despised the warden. Without a broken soul to fix, Elias had no idea who he was. He disappeared into a crushing, heavy isolation. For the first time in his life, his environment was dead silent. There were no midnight crises to manage, no raging fires to frantically extinguish. And that silence was utterly terrifying. It echoed violently with his own unaddressed failures. There was a night on the freezing hardwood floor of his empty apartment where the isolation almost broke his mind completely. Every single part of him wanted to go back, to fix, to save, to feel needed. He gripped his phone, staring blindly at the number of a toxic acquaintance. Just one text, just to dive into someone else's drama, just to silence the internal screaming. And that was exactly why he didn't. He dropped the phone. He let it hit the floor. He chose the agonizing silence. In that exact moment, a profound and terrifying transformation began. It did not happen through frantic, motivational action. It happened through the brutal, unyielding discipline of doing absolutely nothing. He realized that every single time he had caught someone before they hit the concrete, he had stolen their most valuable lesson. Every time he absorbed their pain, he had robbed them of the very friction required for their own growth. He wasn't saving them at all. He was merely delaying their inevitable, catastrophic collision with reality. He finally learned the coldest, hardest truth of the human condition. To rob a man of his pain is to rob him of his purpose. His entire psychological framework fractured and rebuilt itself from iron. He stopped viewing people as fragile glass, needing his constant protection. He started seeing them as autonomous forces with the fundamental right to orchestrate their own destruction. He stopped talking. He started building. He trained his body in the dark. He cultivated a still, impenetrable mind. When Elias finally walked back into the normal world, the shift was invisible to the eye, but energetically deafening. The universe tested him almost immediately. He ran into his old friend, the same friend, drowning in a brand new self-made crisis, frantically begging for a lifeline. He was fully expecting the old Elias to dive straight into the floodwaters. The old Elias would have panicked. The old Elias would have ripped out his own spine to offer support. But the new Elias didn't argue. He didn't offer a lecture, or a loan, or a look of pity. He just stood there. He nodded slowly, like he already knew, and then he turned around and walked away. He let him fall. It was not an act of malice. It was not revenge. It was the highest, purest form of respect. By doing absolutely nothing, Elias finally forced the man to look into his own mirror. He watched from a comfortable distance as his friend hit absolute rock bottom, shattered into 1,000 pieces, and for the very first time in his life, was forced to put his own pieces back together. Elias remained untouched, maintaining absolute sovereignty over his own peace. Sitting calmly in the eye of a hurricane that was no longer his to control. This is exactly where you are standing right now. You are on the very precipice of a life-altering choice. You must let go of the arrogant delusion that you are the author of someone else's salvation. You cannot heal a mind that is secretly in love with its own sickness. When you constantly cushion the fall for the people around you, you create permanent children who do not know how to walk through the fire. It is time to step back into the shadows. Let them fall. Let them break. Let the fierce fire of consequence burn away their endless excuses. Your silence is not an act of abandonment. Your silence is a crucible. Stop offering your precious life force to ghosts who refuse to haunt anywhere but the dark. Withdraw your energy. Reclaim your lost territory. The most powerful thing a human being can do in a world addicted to noise and frantic intervention is to stand entirely still and allow the chips to fall exactly where they may. To love someone deeply sometimes means watching them bleed until they finally learn how to hold their own bandages. So look closely at the people you are desperately trying to hold together. Look at the dead exhaustion staring back at you in the mirror, and ask yourself the one terrifying question you have been running from your entire life. Who are you really trying to save when you refuse to let them fall? Because if the answer is not them, then everything you built your life around was never real.